ようこそいらっしゃい。
Why is Couch Coop so excited to play Ninja Gaiden 4 on the PlayStation 5? Well, I suppose there are a number of reasons. First of all, PlatinumGames development. The last time we saw them work in conjunction with another studio, we got Nier Automata. Team Ninja obviously know their way around a good hack and slash as well, and the Ninja Gaiden series is well within its rights to say it was first there within that genre as an industry mainstay. This was also Game Pass day one. That brings me to the second reason, is it wasn't really performing too well on the poor old GTX 1660, so I'm keen to get it going on a 9th generation system. Yes, we are looking at some very boring photo mode capture. We are in performance. I wanted to stay within that mode. High frame rates, very important for this type of game. We do get 120 on the PlayStation Pro. This game exists to the original format and rules that all of the traditional Ninja Gaiden games obey. It's not had a facelift on that front, but there are certain things that really point towards Platinum being involved. A lot of the early enemy design really points towards their creative style, the way they jump out of those ships as they come in. Even the UI and some of the stations and the restart screen feel like they have 100% Platinum heritage, and you do have a dodge void that gives a minute amount of bullet time. If you can cram it into your mind's eye, this game has been upped on a cinematic level, and it's chaos and speed to a certain extent, but it is not the hardest of the Ninja Gaiden games. We will have that chat later. Starting you off in a very cool looking gothic Neo Tokyo, and yes, I will get rid of those button prompts shortly. Talking of button prompts, they have slightly moved things around, giving you an almost devil-like trigger on L2, which is access to a whole bunch of different moves and is used in some of its counter parry mechanics. A lot like a lot of other modern third-person hack and slashes, this game is leaning on to having a quite responsive parry system, giving you some reward for it and also allowing big chunks of weakness on some of the boss enemies. Koei. It is quite keen to teach you some of its new tricks early doors, and some of the bosses are elongated tutorials on how to exploit a lot of the newer angles. I will say, if you've got two pads and one of them's a bit knackered, I would use the knackered pad because it's going to get abused, let's be honest. That R2, which is your dodge move, gets pumped almost constantly. The game, or none of the games, have ever had a stamina meter, so you just don't need to be standing still. You can always be attacking or always be avoiding. Limb removal is still rife, the gore is still strong, not as much persistent blood as we have seen in earlier titles, but I will say I do like this cyberpunk futuristic aesthetic they've gone for in these early levels. Things do change around, they get a bit more traditional, woodlands, big caves. Here's my end of chapter 1 scorecard, and 44 deaths and a D rank. Yeah, the term get good has no home here. It does keep going full Ratchet and Clank with these transitional stages on rails or in the wind. There's a big leaning onto gliding around, oncoming trains, getting hit by the side of a mountain. There was a lot more of that than I initially expected. Not paying attention, getting hit, or getting a few consecutive deaths will result in life getting taken off your bar, and that, well, as you saw on the scorecard, is something I don't need to be happening. They are fun, and maybe that was something else that Platinum put in, something to sort of change the rhythm up a little bit. Yes, the crawl-in suicide guys are still absolutely devastating. Keep an eye out for them. I also did want to mention that the game comes with a focus button, which is not too handy for crowd control, but really good for the one-on-one boss fights. And they are some of the more intense I've played this year with a hack and slash. But that's Ninja Gaiden right down to the wire. Some of the best boss fights in gaming history are found within that series. They are trying to also implement a sort of R1 winch within combat arenas. Now, some Ninja Gaiden games were all about wall running up and down flat surfaces, using a corner to get out of trouble, coming down from enemies from height, using some of the in-game furniture. There is a little bit of that, but most of the arenas are pretty broad and you do just really concentrate on what you're fighting, much like a lot of other third-person hack and slash modern games within this category. That L2 mode can also break guard and force massive stagger from the enemies, so it's a really good idea to be looking out for that exclamation mark. That is your opportunity to get a good hit in and build on it with anything else you've got in your repertoire. You also have a clicking of the sticks special mode, which you still have to do a build attack within, but if you pull it off in time, it results in an almost insta-kill. All looks very flashy, and that also brings me on to how much weirder the bosses get and how much more I think of a Platinum influence we see with some of the stuff we're dealing with. There's a power slide move as well on the stick. You use it to get underneath objects, but it's also a little bit like a Vanquish system because you're using it to get out of trouble. It kind of sparks and even looks similar. And when you're doing the slow down massive sword slashes and using that big trigger move, it does have a Revengeance vibe. Platinum, Revengeance and Vanquish in a Ninja Gaiden game. I know that's kind of a big sell. And they are really only minute crumbs of those previous games mentioned because this is at heart a true Ninja Gaiden sequel. Like the iconic Devil May Cry or some of the other Ninja Gaiden games, it is up to you to power up your sword and moves full stop. You purchase them from a shop which has got a dude in it that's a little bit like the Bayonetta shopkeeper. I'm stretching all of this. Platinum, just make something yourselves. Just come out with a new game, please. Just sequel Vanquish or Metal Gear Rising. So it's over to the forest we go, and with a new weapon, a spear, which gives a lot more aerial freedom. You can connect and link things up. It feels a bit more fluid. It's very handy because this level comes with quite a lot more flyers, and yes, they do look exactly like the Bayonetta things. There is no avoiding that one. Disappointingly though, for me, we've moved away from that sort of militant cyberpunk vibe. But that's okay because we're deep in some yokai-ridden Japanese forest, which is basically what a lot of the original games were centered around. And we've still kept these cool troops with their weaponry and design. I think they look really amazing, and I'm glad they've kept those on through the progression of the levels. That spear comes with all of its own death animations, and they are gory AF, involving a massive killer death drill. You heard me talking about that focus button earlier and the boss fights, and saying that it's not too handy with the crowd control. It's just not really needed. The flow mechanics, the joining of each fight dependent on where they are in the arena and how close you are to a particular enemy, feels very natural. We see similar stuff in games like Ghost of Tsushima or Yote, where the attacks just link in to the nearest and next thing within the vicinity. The Ninja Gaiden series has always been one of the best at this, and it looks incredible, feels brilliant, and is a great alternative to those big one-on-one boss fights. Top tip, there are side quests to be had in that hub. Just remember to hand them all in. It's quite good on that front, gives you a nice prompt, and you get some reward. Might be health, might be money, which is well important because that's what you need to buy your moves with. We should really talk about the music. It is kind of good. It perfectly matches the action, being nearly as hectic as what you're seeing on screen. It also knows when to slow it all down. It's quite good with the atmospherics. And some of these graphics, some of these interiors, considering we're on performance mode, are pretty crisp. Once you get through that first handful of chapters, things start to become a bit more accessible on difficulty, I feel. This is mainly because you've got more confident with the moveset, and you've expanded purchasing different abilities to go with either of your two weapons, and there is one more to be unlocked. The spear comes with no upgrades whatsoever, so sometimes when you want to feel more comfortable, you'll go back to those dual swords because you've got so many purchased buffs that you're familiar with the outcomes on just about everything. This boss has such a cool two phase. Most of the bosses will either have two sections, and they're always pretty damned exciting. I have got to say, there is nothing in my 9th generation gaming repertoire that is even remotely as hectic or crazy as this game. In sections, however, it doesn't exactly feel AAA. That may be because of the game's format, quite linear, up against some other AAA titles that have come out this year. I think it's going to be hard pushed to make as many GOTY nominations as I'd like to see. That brings me on to the best place to access a game like this, and the Game Pass Day 1 is a total no-brainer. I'm just annoyed I don't have a system on the Microsoft side to run it as good. I'm sure the X and maybe the S can cope with it. As a £60-70 PlayStation 5 physical game, I would probably wait for some discount or look for a pre-owned price. And back to that point mentioned at the start about my favourite Ninja Gaiden game, or recent release from that studio, has got to be that Ninja Gaiden 2 Black Remastered. That's something that does run on my PC, and I will link the review to it. 2 and 3 are massive favourites with fans of the series, I think. This dude's entrance, bro goes full Falcor. That is one crazy looking boss I think we can all agree on. You also might be wondering where Mr. Hayabusa is. Don't worry, he makes an appearance. Can you put your favourite Ninja Gaiden game in the comments? Is it Ninja Gaiden 4? Please also stay tuned for some more local co-op content. Some new videos on that front dropping on Sunday. My name was CouchCube and I look forward to seeing you down there. 終わりだ。気持ち悪い。